Everyone always says your world can change in 1 second. I just didn't think my second would happen with my sweaty hand locked inside another boy's after a football game. The crowd hadn't even finished cheering when I realized what I'd done. My palm was pressed to his, my heart hammering, and when I finally looked up, the whole damn stadium was staring. Maybe they didn't all notice. Maybe it was just a few people. But in a high school like mine, a few people meant the entire building knew before first period Monday morning. His name was Caleb. My teammate, my rival, my God. I can't believe I'm even thinking it. My first real crush. We weren't supposed to be this close. Not in Texas. Not in our school where the Friday night football game was a religion and boys like me were supposed to keep our feelings buried somewhere between the weight room and the locker room jokes. But the second he grabbed my hand, no, the second I didn't let go, I knew I was done for. And that's the story everyone thinks they know. The quarterback who held hands with his teammate. But no one knows what led us there. No one knows how much it hurt before it felt good. I first noticed Caleb long before that night. He wasn't the kind of guy you could ignore. Tall, lean muscle, dark eyes that looked like they carried secrets, and that infuriating smirk he threw at me every time I messed up a play. He wasn't the quarterback. He was our wide receiver. Fast as hell, cocky, always acting like he didn't care about anything. Except I knew better. I'd catch him studying the playbook in the corner when no one was watching. The first time we actually talked outside of football was in the locker room after a brutal loss. Everyone else had cleared out, their jokes and curses fading into the night, but Caleb stayed behind. I was sitting on the bench, helmet at my feet, wishing I could disappear. "You're too hard on yourself," he said, leaning against the lockers like he owned the place. "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "You're not the one screwing up." He laughed, this low sound that made my chest tighten. "You think I don't mess up? You just don't notice because you're too busy hating yourself." That was Caleb, direct, annoyingly insightful, and always able to slip past the walls I built. The weeks that followed blurred into practices, homework, and 1,000 little moments that kept pulling me closer to him. Late-night text messages about plays that turned into conversations about music, family, and the kind of dreams we'd never admit to anyone else. He told me he wanted to get out of town someday, to escape the suffocating smallness of it all. I told him I wanted to, too. I wanted to go somewhere I could breathe, where I didn't have to pretend every second of my life. It was terrifying how easy it became, laughing with him, leaning on him, noticing the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every word, every glance, wondering if he felt it too or if I was just setting myself up for heartbreak. And then came the game. The stadium lights were blinding, the crowd roaring, every muscle in my body burning with adrenaline. We'd been fighting for this win all season, and in the last quarter, when I threw that final pass, it was Caleb who caught it. He sprinted like his life depended on it, crossing into the end zone just as the clock ran out. The field erupted. Players tackled each other in celebration. Coaches screamed. The crowd went wild. And me? I ran straight for him. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the months of pretending. Maybe it was the way his grin split his face open. The kind of pure joy I'd never seen before. I grabbed his hand and pulled him close, like maybe the world could freeze right there and I wouldn't have to hide anymore. But the world didn't freeze. The world noticed. By the time we made it back to the locker room, the whispers had already started. Monday morning was hell. Whispers in the hallway, stares I couldn't escape, laughter from people who used to be my friends. "Hey, lover boy," someone sneered by the lockers. "Hold any good hands lately?" I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. Mostly, I wanted to rewind time and take it all back. But when I caught Caleb's eyes across the hall, steady and unflinching, A part of me didn't regret it. Not one damn bit. He didn't avoid me. He didn't act ashamed. He just walked beside me like nothing was wrong. And that scared me more than anything. Because if he wasn't afraid, then maybe it meant this was real. Maybe it meant I couldn't keep pretending anymore. That's the thing no one tells you about falling for another boy in high school. It's not just about you and him. It's about everyone else. The rumors, the judgment, the weight of expectations pressing down until you can hardly breathe. But somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there's this quiet truth that keeps you going. The way his hand feels in yours, steady and certain, even when the whole world is against you. And I wasn't ready to let go of that. Not then. Not ever. The truth was, I couldn't sleep that entire week. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed that moment under the lights. The crowd screaming, my hand in Caleb's, and then the sharp sting of laughter echoing down the hallways the next morning. High school has a cruel way of magnifying everything. One rumor becomes gospel. One glance becomes proof. And when it came to me and Caleb, the whispers spread like wildfire. By Tuesday, even the teachers looked at me differently. They didn't say anything, but I could feel it in the way their eyes lingered, the silence that followed me into classrooms. I thought maybe Caleb would back off, give me space, pretend it hadn't happened, but instead he did the opposite. At lunch, he sat across from me like always. "You're not eating," he said, tossing a bag of chips onto my tray. "Not hungry. You're gonna starve yourself before playoffs. Then I'll have to drag your sorry ass across the field." Despite myself, I laughed. It was short, weak, but it slipped out. And just like that, his smirk softened into something real. Something only I ever got to see. "You can't let them win," he said, quieter now. "They already did." "No." Caleb leaned forward, voice steady, eyes locking on mine. "They only win if you give up. Don't give them that satisfaction." The cafeteria noise faded around us. For a second, it was just him and me, sitting in this bubble of defiance I didn't know how to live in yet. But not everyone wanted me to keep fighting. That night, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. He didn't yell. Dad wasn't the yelling type, but the disappointment in his eyes was worse. "I heard what happened Friday," he said, his voice tight. "People are talking." I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. "It was nothing, son." His tone cut through me. "You know how this looks. Football is your future. You've got scouts coming. Do you want to throw it away over a mistake?" A mistake. That's what he called it. I didn't mean. The words tangled in my throat. I wanted to scream that it wasn't a mistake, that it felt like the only true thing I'd ever done. But I saw the lines on his face, the fear in his eyes, and I couldn't. Instead, I said, "It won't happen again." His shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Good. Keep your head down. Focus on the game." And just like that, my heart cracked in two. The pressure only grew as the week dragged on. Coaches acted like nothing had happened, but I could hear the whispers in the locker room. Some guys avoided me, others threw casual jabs that cut sharper than they realized. One afternoon, as I was tying my cleats, a voice hissed behind me. "Faggot." The word hit harder than any tackle. I froze, fingers trembling. Part of me wanted to turn around, to fight, to prove I wasn't weak. But another part, the bigger part, just wanted to disappear. Before I could react, Caleb's voice cut through. "Say that again." The room went silent. I turned to see him standing there, jaw clenched, eyes blazing. The guy who'd said it, Trevor, a linebacker with too much muscle and not enough brain, shifted uncomfortably. "I was just joking." Didn't sound like a joke. Caleb stepped closer, not breaking eye contact. Trevor backed down. "Whatever, man." The tension broke, and the others quickly busied themselves. pretending not to notice. But the moment branded itself in me. Later, as we walked out to the parking lot, I muttered, "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did," he said simply. And I realized then that Caleb wasn't just fearless. He was choosing to stand with me, even when it cost him. Friday night, exactly 1 week after the game, he showed up at my house. I wasn't expecting him. Mom let him in, smiling like he was just another teammate stopping by to study plays. She didn't know the storm that brewed under my skin every time he was near. We ended up in my room, door cracked open just enough to keep Mom from worrying. Caleb sprawled across my bed like he belonged there, flipping a football between his hands. "You've been quiet," he said. "What do you want me to say?" "That you're not giving up." I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. "I don't know if I can do this. Everyone's watching. My dad's pissed. Scouts. Scouts don't care who you hold hands with. They care if you can throw." I shot him a look. "You don't get it." His expression softened. "You're right. I don't. My dad's never been around, so I don't have to live up to anybody's expectations but my own. But you've been carrying the whole damn town on your shoulders since freshman year." Silence stretched between us. Then softer, he added, "I just don't want you to carry it alone anymore." My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him everything. How much I wanted him, how terrified I was, how alive I felt when he looked at me. But the words stuck, heavy and dangerous. So instead I said, "Thanks." It wasn't enough, but it was all I had. That weekend, something shifted. I saw the way people looked at us when we walked down the hall together, the way rumors swirled like wildfire. But instead of shrinking, Caleb seemed to grow taller, louder, more himself. And maybe, just maybe, some of his courage rubbed off on me. Because when Trevor muttered another slur at practice, I didn't stay quiet this time. I turned, stared him dead in the eye, and said, "Got a problem?" The whole team froze. Trevor blinked, clearly not expecting me to fight back. He muttered something under his breath and stormed off. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't in weeks: control. But courage has a price. By Monday morning, someone had scrawled "freak" across my locker in black marker. I stood there staring at it, my chest hollow. Around me, kids whispered, laughed, pointed. Then Caleb appeared beside me. He didn't say a word. He just pulled a Sharpie from his pocket and added the words "and proud" right under it. Gasps rippled through the hallway. My heart nearly burst out of my chest. "Come on," he said, grabbing my arm. And for the first time in days, I walked tall. That night, lying in bed, I realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. This wasn't just about surviving high school anymore. This was about choosing to live. And maybe, just maybe, about choosing him. By the time October settled in, the air turned sharp and restless, and so did everything between me and Caleb. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were flat-out taunts, crude jokes shouted across the halls, memes made with blurry pictures of us together. Every corner of the school felt like a stage, and I was the unwilling star of a play I never auditioned for. But worse than the noise outside was the silence at home. Dad barely looked at me now. He used to ask about practice, about game film, about the scouts that had started circling. Now he just sat at the kitchen table with his coffee, eyes on the paper, his jaw tight. One night, he finally said it. "I can't believe you'd throw everything away over this." I swallowed hard, staring at the plate of untouched food in front of me. "Over what?" "You know what." His voice cracked, low and sharp, like he was afraid Mom would overhear. "You're ruining your future. You're ruining this family's name." Something inside me snapped. Maybe I don't care about the family's name, The words rang louder than I expected. Mom gasped from the sink, her hands frozen in the dishwater. Dad's face went red, and for a moment, I thought he'd hit me. He didn't. He just looked at me like I wasn't his son anymore. I bolted upstairs before he could say anything else. That night, Caleb texted me. Caleb, heard what happened. You okay? Me, not really. Caleb, want me to come over? Me, no. Dad would kill me. Caleb, then sneak out. I stared at the glowing screen, my chest aching. He didn't get it. He couldn't understand the crushing weight of trying to be the perfect son, the perfect quarterback, the perfect lie. Me, not tonight. For the first time since this all started, I left him on read. The next few days were worse. I kept my distance at practice, stopped sitting with him at lunch, ignored his texts. I told myself it was to protect him, to keep him from getting dragged down with me. But the truth? I was scared. Scared of my dad. Scared of the team turning on me. Scared of how much I wanted Caleb, even when I knew wanting him meant burning my whole world down. One afternoon, after practice, he cornered me in the locker room. Everyone else had cleared out, the sound of slamming lockers fading until it was just us. You've been avoiding me, he said. I've been busy. Bullshit. His eyes were fire, his voice low but sharp. You think you can just push me away and that'll fix everything? You think I don't know what people are saying? You think I don't hear it too? I finally met his gaze. And why the hell are you still here then? Why are you making this harder? Because I care about you. His voice cracked, echoing against the tile walls. And I'm not gonna apologize for that. My throat tightened. God. I wanted to grab him, to kiss him, to tell him he was the only thing keeping me sane. But instead, I whispered, "You should." The look on his face nearly broke me. He opened his mouth, then shut it, shaking his head. Fine, he said, his voice like ice, if that's what you want. And then he walked out, leaving me alone in the empty locker room, drowning in the echo of what I just destroyed. The days that followed were the loneliest of my life. Caleb stopped texting. He stopped sitting near me. On the field, he still played like hell, still caught every pass I threw, but the space between us felt wider than the entire field. At night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every mistake, every second I could have chosen differently. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if I could. Then, one Friday, things exploded. It started with Trevor again, because of course it did. We were running drills when he shoved me harder than necessary, knocking me flat on the turf. Oops, he sneered. Didn't see you there, princess. The team laughed. I scrambled to my feet, blood boiling. Before I could lunge at him, Caleb's voice rang out. Knock it off. Trevor smirked. Or what? You gonna hold his hand again? The laughter grew. My chest tightened, shame and fury tangling into something dangerous. But Caleb didn't back down. He stepped right into Trevor's face. Or I'll make you regret it. The air went electric. For a moment I thought Trevor would swing. Instead, Coach blew the whistle, barking at us to line up. The moment passed, but the damage was done. Later, in the locker room, Caleb walked right past me without a word. And that hurt worse than anything Trevor could have said. That weekend, I finally broke. I drove to his house late Saturday night, parking down the street because I didn't know if his mom would tell mine. My hands shook as I knocked on his window, the glass rattling softly. He slid it open, eyes wide. What the hell are you doing here? I'm sorry, I blurted. I didn't mean what I said. He climbed out, barefoot on the grass, arms folded across his chest. You sure about that? Because you were pretty convincing. I was scared, I admitted. My voice cracked. I thought pushing you away would make it easier, but it didn't. It just made me miserable. He stared at me for a long time. The quiet between us was thick, heavy, dangerous. Finally, he sighed. You're an idiot. Yeah, I whispered. I know. And then, before I could stop myself, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. We stood there under the pale glow of the streetlight, two boys in the middle of nowhere, Texas, holding hands like the whole world wasn't about to tear us apart. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't fireworks. But it was something real, something that felt like breathing again after being underwater for too long. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was drowning. And for the first time in forever, I started to believe maybe, just maybe, we could survive this. But I knew, deep down, the hardest part hadn't even started yet. Because parents talk, coaches talk, and in a town like ours, secrets don't stay secrets for long. And I had no idea how much we'd both have to lose before we found a way to win. Sunday morning hit like a hangover. Even though I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol, I woke up with that memory from the night before burned into my chest. Caleb's hand in mine under the streetlight, his voice soft and steady, calling me an idiot but not letting go. For a few hours, it felt like maybe everything would be okay. Then reality came crashing down. By Monday, the story had spread farther than the school halls. Parents whispered in the stands. Coaches pulled me aside. Even the principal gave me a look that said he'd rather I didn't exist. And at home, things finally exploded. Dad was waiting for me after practice, his truck parked outside the field house. He never picked me up, ever. So the sight of him leaning against the hood made my stomach drop. Get in, he said. The ride was silent, heavy with the kind of rage that simmers just under the surface. When we pulled into the driveway, he didn't move. He just sat there gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Is it true? He asked finally, his voice sharp as broken glass. I swallowed hard. Is what true? He turned to me, eyes blazing. You and Caleb. Don't lie to me. My throat closed. Every excuse I'd rehearsed, every denial I'd planned. It all evaporated. The truth sat heavy on my tongue. Yes, I whispered. The silence that followed was worse than yelling. Worse than anything. He just stared at me like he didn't recognize the kid sitting in his truck. You're throwing your life away, he said. Each word clipped final. No son of mine. He stopped, shaking his head. You're not the boy I raised. The words cut deeper than any slur, any joke at school. Because this wasn't Trevor or some faceless classmate. This was my dad. And he'd just told me I wasn't his son. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. I went through the motions at school, at practice, numb and hollow. Caleb noticed, of course. He always did. Talk to me, he said after practice, cornering me by the lockers. I shook my head. There's nothing to say. Bullshit. You look like you're about to fall apart. I am falling apart. The words ripped out of me before I could stop them. My dad hates me. My team hates me. Half the damn town hates me. And you don't get it, Caleb. You don't have to live with the disappointment every time you walk through the door. His jaw tightened. You think I don't know what disappointment feels like? You think I haven't been written off my whole life? At least you had a dad around long enough to be disappointed in you. The air between us went sharp. He regretted it the second it left his mouth. I could see it in his eyes, but it was too late. I stepped back, shaking. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't make this a competition. I'm not. He reached for me, but I pulled away. For the first time, I saw fear in his face. Real fear. Not the kind that comes from a linebacker charging at you, but the kind that comes when the person you care about most is slipping through your fingers. "Please," he said, softer now. "Don't shut me out." I wanted to give in. God, I wanted to, but the weight pressing down on me was suffocating, and all I could think was that if I let him hold me, I'd break completely. So I walked away. The breaking point came on Friday night at the next game. The stands were packed, the lights blinding, the whole town buzzing with the same energy that used to feel like home to me. But this time, every cheer sounded hollow, every glance burned into my skin. Midway through the game, after a fumbled play that had nothing to do with me, someone in the stands shouted it, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't let the queer quarterback screw it up." The field went dead silent for half a second. Then, laughter. I froze, helmet clutched in my hands, chest heaving. The coaches barked at us to reset. The ref blew the whistle, but I couldn't move. My vision blurred. My ears rang. And then, out of nowhere, Caleb's hand landed on my shoulder. Strong, steady, grounding. "Focus on me," he whispered through his face mask. I blinked at him, my throat tight. He nodded once, like he was daring me to believe I still belonged out there. So I did. I snapped the ball, dropped back, and launched it straight into his arms. He caught it, of course. He always did. And for a second, the crowd's laughter turned into stunned silence, then cheers. But the damage was done. When the game ended, and we trudged back into the locker room, the weight of that word clung to me like sweat, and this time no amount of touchdowns could wash it off. That night I broke. I didn't go home. I didn't even think. I drove straight to Caleb's, parking crooked in his driveway, stumbling up to his porch. He opened the door, eyes wide, and before he could say anything, I crashed into him. "I can't do this," I choked out. I can't. I can't be who they want me to be, and I can't lose you either." His arms wrapped around me instantly, strong and sure, pulling me against his chest. "You're not gonna lose me," he murmured into my hair. "Not ever." For the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Really cry. And he held me like it was okay to fall apart, like maybe I didn't have to be strong all the time. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, the house quiet around us. Eventually, he pulled back just enough to look at me, his hand cupping my face. "You're allowed to be scared," he said softly, "but don't let them decide who you are. Don't give them that power." My chest ached. My whole world was on fire, but here he was, steady in the middle of it, looking at me like I was worth saving. And in that moment, I realized something. Maybe winning didn't mean trophies or scouts or living up to my dad's impossible expectations. Maybe winning was as simple as this, holding on to the one person who made me feel like myself no matter the cost. Of course, the cost was coming. I could feel it looming closer every day. But for that night, wrapped up in Caleb's arms, I let myself believe we could survive it. Even if the whole world was against us. The last stretch of their story was never meant to be easy. For weeks after that night on the football field, it felt like every hallway was a battlefield. Whispers chased them. Laughter sometimes cut like glass. But there were also the silences, those quiet, heavy stares that said more than words ever could. Daniel had always known the cost of honesty in a place like Oak Ridge High, but he hadn't expected the strange mixture of cruelty and kindness that followed. Some people distanced themselves, old friends turned cold, but others, unexpectedly, leaned in. First, he thought Chris would regret it all. He expected him to pull away, to claim it was a mistake, to drown the truth in silence. But Chris didn't. Every morning, Chris found him by his locker, books in hand, eyes steady, and walked with him down the hall like nothing had changed. And maybe that was the most radical thing of all, acting as if they had nothing to hide. Still, Daniel's chest ached with the constant tension. He feared what Chris's family would say, what his coach would do, what college scouts might think. He feared that their fragile happiness would be crushed under the weight of expectations. One Friday night, Chris pulled him onto the empty bleachers after practice. The field lights buzzed faintly, the stadium seats stretching out in silence. "You know," Chris said, voice low, "I thought the worst thing that could happen was people finding out. And now?" Daniel asked. Chris shrugged, running a hand through his damp hair. "Turns out the worst thing would be pretending it didn't matter. Pretending you don't matter." Daniel blinked, the words lodging somewhere deep inside his chest. He wanted to believe them, but the years of hiding and fearing made it hard. "It's not that simple," he whispered. "People talk. They judge. They'll try to tear us apart." "Then let them try," Chris said firmly, reaching for his hand. "We'll give them something real to talk about." That moment was a turning point. The whispers didn't disappear, but they began to change. The more Chris stood his ground, the more Daniel found courage in himself. When teammates made a crude joke in the locker room, Chris called them out. When someone sneered at Daniel in the cafeteria, Chris slid his tray down next to his without hesitation. Slowly, painfully, the narrative shifted. They weren't just the rumor. They were Chris and Daniel, and everyone had to deal with that reality. One night, under the soft glow of street lamps, Daniel admitted something he hadn't said out loud before. "I used to think love stories like ours were doomed, that they had to end in heartbreak or secrecy." Chris squeezed his hand, his thumb brushing gently over Daniel's knuckles. "Then maybe we're writing a new kind of story." And so they did. When spring came and the final game of the season arrived, Daniel stood in the stands, heart pounding as Chris sprinted down the field. The crowd roared when the touchdown was scored, but Daniel's eyes weren't on the scoreboard. They were on Chris, who turned toward the bleachers with that same look. The one that said, "This is for you." After the game, with the stadium buzzing and the team celebrating, Chris didn't hesitate. He jogged toward the stands, pulled Daniel down from the bleachers, and kissed him in front of the entire school. The world went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted cheers, claps, gasps. Some walked away, some stayed, eyes wide. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because Chris's lips were warm against his, and Daniel felt something he hadn't in a long time: freedom. It wasn't a perfect ending. Life rarely offered those. But it was enough. Enough to know that love could survive the weight of judgment, that courage could bloom in the unlikeliest places, and that two boys could stand hand in hand on a football field in small-town America and still dream of a future together. The story wasn't about winning the game or even surviving high school. It was about refusing to let fear dictate love. It was about holding on no matter who was watching. And as the night closed in, Daniel realized something he wished he had known all along. The hardest battles were never on the field. They were in the heart. And together they had won. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.